I am 62 years old, and for many years, I believed that silence was the only way to keep a family together. I didn't
This is
argue,
completely
I didn't
unacceptable.
complain, I didn't demand
Well, I don't
anything.
know what you
I
expect me to
simply
do
paid,
about it.
quietly, the mortgage, the tuition, the insurance. I paid for the very people who never stopped saying I was just an old woman living off a pension. Until one day, when I lay alone in a hospital bed, my hands still trembling from a mild stroke, and my son said he was too busy to come. That was the moment I understood something clearly. I was never a strong mother in their eyes. I was just convenient. But what they didn't know is this: when an older woman stops staying silent, the truth can make an entire room lower its head. If you've ever been looked down on simply because you were the one who always gave, stay with me until the end of this story. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if this story speaks to you, please hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the stories coming next. 13. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 62 years old. I spent nearly 30 years as the chief accountant for a construction materials company. Numbers were my world. Balance sheets, cash flow, the quiet skill of looking at figures and instantly knowing who was living beyond their means. My husband passed away 10 years ago, taken by a sudden heart attack. Since then, I've lived alone in a small house in the suburbs of Ohio. Nothing fancy, no special comforts, but quiet. I like that quiet. At least, I used to think I did. I have 2 children, but only Daniel, my younger son, appears regularly in my life. Not because he cares more, but because he needs me more. Daniel and his wife, Rachel, are always saying they're struggling. Struggling because housing prices keep rising. Struggling because of the cost of raising a child. Struggling because life today is not like it used to be. I heard those words for 7 straight years. 7 years ago, Daniel called me, his voice heavy with worry. "Mom, we're about to lose the house. We're just short on the down payment. Just this once. Just this once." I transferred the money within 20 minutes. No questions, no conditions. I thought that was what a mother was supposed to do. Then came private school tuition for little Emily. Rachel said to me one evening, as I was clearing the dinner table, "You know, public schools just aren't good anymore. We only want to give her a strong start." I nodded. I always nodded. After that came Daniel's health insurance, car repairs, credit card bills, a temporary advance to keep their business afloat. No one ever asked, "Mom, would you mind?" They just said, "You already have a pension. What do you even spend money on?" That sentence was repeated so many times that eventually I began to wonder, did not spending on myself mean that I didn't need anything at all? Daniel often spoke to me in a tone that was half pity, half superiority. "Mom, finances are complicated these days. You don't really understand how things work anymore." Rachel would smile, scrolling on her phone, not even looking at me. "You're older now. Let us handle these things." The irony was that the one handling everything was me. I can't remember the last time Daniel asked if I was tired. I can't remember Rachel ever asking if I needed help. But I remember very clearly one winter evening last year. I went to their house for dinner. Rachel made pasta. Daniel sat on the couch watching the news. I had just set my bag down when Daniel spoke, without even turning around. "Mom, since you're stopping by the bank anyway, can you transfer the insurance payment for us this month? The card's acting up." It wasn't a question. It was an instruction. I stood there, in my own son's kitchen, feeling like I'd just been assigned a task to complete. That night at dinner, Rachel talked excitedly about their summer vacation plans, Florida, a resort, better class plane tickets. I took a bite of bread and chewed slowly. I did the math in my head. I knew exactly how much that insurance payment was, enough to buy 2 round-trip flights. But I said nothing. because that's the kind of person I was. I didn't want to make things awkward. I didn't want to become the difficult mother. I used to believe that if I stayed silent long enough, if I gave enough, then one day they would see me differently, as a mother worth appreciating, as an important part of the family. But the truth was, every time I gave more, they spoke to me less. Every time I carried more, they treated it as expected. On one rare occasion, I tried to speak up. Daniel, I have my own expenses too. I'm not working anymore. Daniel sighed, leaning back in his chair, his voice full of practiced patience. Mom, we're not forcing you. You help because you want to. Rachel added, softly, like a breeze passing through the room. That's right, Mom. If you feel pressured, then don't. We'll figure it out. The way they said it made me feel like I was the selfish one for bringing it up at all. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and looked at my bank account. The transfers were lined up neatly, month after month, all the same. I stared at the screen for a long time, then I shut it. I told myself, I'm fine. I'm always fine. But there was one thing they didn't know. Not one of them knew. I am an accountant. I never fail to keep records. I know exactly how much I've transferred. I know how large that total really is. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. Not yet. But even then, inside my own family, I began to recognize a cold truth. I was no longer a mother who was listened to. I was no longer a woman who was respected. I was just a walking wallet. And as long as I opened on time, no one felt the need to ask how I was. Feeling. I used to believe that no matter how twisted things became, when I truly needed help, my family would be there. That belief was the last thing I held on to after 7 years of silence. It shattered on a gray, bitter Monday morning. I was standing in the kitchen getting ready to make coffee when the room suddenly tilted. The mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor. I tried to bend down to pick it up, but my legs wouldn't respond. The room spun, as if someone had turned the entire house sideways. I remember thinking one very clear thought before I collapsed onto the floor. Don't die here, not like this. I woke up in the emergency room. The white lights were blinding. A nurse was calling my name, her voice steady and professional. Mrs. Hale, can you hear me? You've had a mild stroke. We need to keep you for observation. A stroke. The word had always felt distant until it landed squarely inside my life. I didn't panic, strangely enough. I was just tired. A deep, heavy exhaustion, as if my body had finally decided to stop trying. When the nurse asked if there was a family member she could contact, the first name that came to my mind was Daniel. I called him, my hand still slightly trembling. The phone rang for a long time. Mom? His voice came through, faintly irritated. What is it? I'm in a meeting. I spoke slowly, very slowly, afraid that if I spoke faster, I wouldn't be able to keep myself together. Daniel, I'm at the hospital. I had a mild stroke. It's not too serious, but the doctor says I need to stay for monitoring. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Daniel said, Oh, really? No. Are you okay? No. I'll come right away. I swallowed hard. I just need you to come by and help me with the admission paperwork. And maybe, if possible, stay at my house for a few days. I don't want to leave it empty. Daniel let out a long, very audible sigh. Mom, I'm really busy this week. Deadlines are piling up. Can't you ask someone else? I didn't know what I was hoping for more, concern, or at least hesitation, but there was neither. What about Rachel? I asked, my voice softer now. Maybe she could. Rachel has to take Emily to tutoring and pick her up. Her schedule's full. He said it as if I'd asked for something unreasonable. All right, I said. I'll manage. Yeah, just rest, Daniel replied. You've got insurance, right? The hospital will handle it. The call ended faster than I expected. A little while later, my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. You have insurance, so the hospital can take care of things. Don't overthink it. No name. No. Are you okay, Mom? I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was angry, but because something inside me had just dropped all the way to the bottom. 3 days later, the doctor discharged me. You need rest. Avoid stress. Is there anyone at home to help you? He asked. I smiled, the smile I'd been using for many years now. I'm fine. I can take care of myself. I called an Uber home. The driver was a middle-aged man, friendly but not intrusive. He asked if I needed help carrying my bag inside. I nodded, my throat tightening unexpectedly. A stranger asked me something my own son never did. The house was dark and cold when I opened the door. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except now I felt like a stranger inside my own familiar space. No message asking if I'd made it home. No call asking if I needed anything. That evening, I sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, my phone in my hand. I scrolled through my contacts, then turned the screen off. A thought surfaced clearly now, no longer vague like before. If I hadn't woken up that day, they wouldn't have come. The truth wasn't loud. It didn't make me cry. It just sat there, cold, final, like the last number at the bottom of a ledger. Close to midnight, I stood up and walked to my desk. My laptop was sitting there, still closed, as if waiting for me. I opened it. I knew what I was about to see. I had never dared to look, month by month, year by year. The transfers appeared on the screen, dates, amounts, recipients, every line accounted for, nothing missing. I scrolled down and down and down again. My heart slowed, steady and calm. This was no longer emotion. This was a fact. For the first time in many years, I didn't ask myself whether I was useful. I began asking a different question instead. So what exactly am I being loved for? I closed the laptop and sat in the dark house, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. At that moment, I hadn't made any decisions yet. But there was one thing I knew for certain. I'd reached the limit of my silence. That night, after I closed the laptop, I couldn't sleep. Not because of pain, not because of fear, but because for the first time in many years, I was no longer lying to myself. I knew what I was about to do. And I also knew that once I faced the truth head on, there would be no going back to who I used to be. In the days that followed, I lived very slowly. I took my medication on time, walked around the neighborhood every morning, and spent most of the remaining hours sitting at my desk. I printed out my bank statements, one stack after another. The printer hummed steadily, dry and mechanical. I arranged each pile of paper neatly, placing them in order on the desk. Month, year, amount. I took a pencil and made notes in the margins. My hand didn't shake. I didn't hesitate. I had been an accountant my entire life. Numbers had never been emotional to me. But this time, they were telling a very clear story. The first year, the down payment on the house, second year, private school tuition, the third year, health insurance, car repairs, then credit cards, then temporary loans, then this month is really tight. 7 years, more than $410,000. I stared at the final number for a long time, not angry, not stunned, just a cold sensation running straight down my spine. This wasn't helpful. This was support. And the most frightening part wasn't the amount of money. It was the fact that none of them had ever thought it necessary to stop. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't text Rachel. I didn't announce anything. I did one single thing. I logged into my bank account, and I canceled every recurring transfer. No ceremony, no declaration, just a few clicks. Very quiet. 3 days later, my phone started ringing. "Mom?" Daniel said, his voice more urgent than usual. "Is there something wrong with the account? The bank says the insurance payment didn't come through this month." I let the phone ring a few more beats before answering. "Oh," I said calmly, "I'm reviewing my expenses." There was a second of silence on the other end. "Reviewing?" Daniel repeated. "Mom, those payments are fixed." "Fixed?" I almost laughed. "Nothing is fixed," I replied, "especially now that I'm retired." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Mom, what are you doing? We can't keep up like this." "How have you been keeping up all this time?" I asked softly. "What would you do without me?" He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than any words could. That evening, Rachel texted me, "What you're doing isn't fair. Family is supposed to help each other when things are hard." I read the message. Then I set the phone down. A little while later, another one came through. "You know we're not well off. Why didn't you say anything beforehand? Are you tired, Mom? Are you okay? Just, why didn't you keep going?" The next day, Daniel showed up at my house, unannounced. He stood at the door with his hands in his pockets, his face a mix of irritation and unease. "Mom," he said as soon as I opened the door, "what you're doing is putting us in a difficult position." I looked at my son. For the first time, I didn't see him as a child. I saw him as a 38-year-old man standing in his mother's house, making demands. "Who did I put in a difficult position?" I asked. "Or did I simply stop carrying the load for you?" Daniel frowned. "Mom, you're overreacting. You helped all these years because you wanted to." I nodded. "That's right. I wanted to. But now, I don't." Rachel stood behind him, arms crossed. "So what is this? You suddenly change after a few days in the hospital?" The way she said a few days made everything clear to me. "I haven't changed," I said. "I've just stopped." Rachel let out a thin smile. "Stopping is a selfish choice too, you know." That sentence should have hurt me, but it didn't, because I was seeing them more clearly than ever before. Daniel shook his head. "Mom, we never thought you'd do this. After everything we've—" "Done what?" I interrupted quietly. "What exactly have you given me?" Both of them fell silent. I opened the door wider, signaling that it was time for them to leave. "I'm tired. If there's nothing else, you should go." Daniel looked at me as if I were a stranger. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say to me. When the door closed, I leaned against the wall and let out a slow breath. No victory. Not yet. But I had taken back control. A week later, I received a call from the local church, the one I had supported faithfully for many years. "Mrs. Hale," the woman on the line said, "we're preparing for our 40th anniversary celebration. The council would be honored if you'd say a few words. You're one of our longest-standing supporters." I held the phone and didn't answer right away. A thought came to me. Very clear, very calm. "Yes," I said. "I'll be there." I set the phone down and looked at the stacks of bank statements on my desk. The numbers were still there. They didn't need me to defend them. They only needed to be seen. The church's 40th anniversary service took place on a Sunday morning with soft sunlight filtering in. I arrived early and sat in the third row, the same row I had occupied for years. The ceiling was high, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, and everything looked so solemn that no one would have imagined this place was about to witness something so bare and unfiltered. The family was almost fully present. Relatives, old friends, people who had shaken my hand, smiled at me, and called me Kind Margaret. Daniel and Rachel sat near the front. Daniel wore a dark suit, his hair neatly combed. Rachel chose a modest dress, her smile gentle. They looked like a model family, dutiful, respectable. I looked at them without resentment, only with clarity. When the host introduced me to speak, I stood up holding a thin envelope. My hands didn't shake. I didn't rush. I walked to the podium and looked out at the congregation. Familiar faces, encouraging nods, urging, expectant eyes. "My name is Margaret Hale," I began, my voice just loud enough. "I've been part of this church for nearly 30 years. Today, I'm honored to stand here." I paused for a beat, not to steady myself, but to let the room settle. "I'm not here to complain," I continued, "and I'm not here to accuse anyone." Daniel leaned back slightly, as if relieved. Rachel smiled, just a little. "I only want to share a story," I said. "A story told by numbers." A few quiet murmurs rippled through the room. I opened the envelope and took out a neat stack of papers. "For the past 7 years," I said, "I've helped my son's family. I did it willingly, because I believed in family." I lifted my eyes and looked directly at Daniel. But recently, I've heard myself described as useless, as out of touch with modern life. The room grew quieter. "So I asked myself," I said slowly, "if I'm useless, then why have I been paying for nearly everything these past 7 years?" I didn't look down at the paper when I read the numbers. I knew them the way I knew my own name. Down payment on a house, $95,000. Private school tuition for my grandchild, $140,000. Health insurance, car repairs, credit cards, and so-called temporary support, over $175,000. I placed the papers on the podium. Total, more than $410,000. A soft intake of breath passed through the congregation. I continued in the same steady voice. "These are bank statements. These are bills, not stories." Daniel shot to his feet. "Mom," he said, louder than necessary, "what are you doing? Why are you bringing family matters here?" I turned toward him. "You don't think this is a family matter?" Rachel stood as well, her voice trembling though she tried to remain composed. "Mom, we never forced you. You helped because you wanted to." I nodded. "That's right, I wanted to, and now I don't." Someone in the pew nearby whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel spoke quickly, as if losing control. "Mom, you can't just throw out numbers and—" "Do you want to explain?" I asked. "Then explain. In front of everyone." Daniel opened his mouth. Then it closed it. Rachel cut in, her voice sharper now. "Families help each other in hard times. You can't call that support." I looked at her calmly. "If that's help," I asked, "then when I was in the hospital with a stroke, who helped me?" The entire room froze. Rachel went pale. Daniel looked down. I didn't wait for an answer. "I'm not standing here to humiliate anyone," I said. "I'm just putting the truth where it belongs." I gathered the papers and slid them back into the envelope. For many years, I stayed silent. I thought silence was a sacrifice, but it turns out silence only makes people forget boundaries. No one spoke. The host stood nearby, gripping the microphone. He didn't interrupt. There was no need. Daniel looked around, then back at me. The confidence in his eyes was gone. "Mom, this is too much." I smiled, a very small smile. "No," I said. "What's too much is calling the person who pays for your life useless." I stepped down from the podium. I didn't look back. Behind me, there was no applause, only a heavy silence. And in that silence, I knew one thing. The image of devotion they had been wearing had just fallen to the floor, shattered, right in front of everyone. After the service that day, I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. What needed to be seen had been seen. What needed to be heard had already echoed, in the heaviest silence of all. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear updates about my son's family from them, but from the community. In a small town like this, news doesn't spread fast, it spreads deep. Daniel was no longer asked to lead volunteer groups. Rachel no longer received polite compliments every Sunday. Handshakes became shorter. Eyes slid away more quickly. No one openly criticized them. The community simply did something very American. It stepped back. And when that distance lingered, money began to reveal its true face. One Thursday afternoon, Daniel called me. This time, he wasn't rushed. His voice was softer, lower, the voice of someone about to ask for something. "Mom," he said, "we're having a bit of trouble." I didn't answer right away. I let him continue. "We're behind on the mortgage. Rachel's trying to manage things, but it's not enough." There was no apology, no acknowledgement. I asked, "Are you calling to talk or to ask for money?" On the other end of the line, Daniel fell silent. Then he exhaled, long and slow. "Mom, I know things went too far, but we're family." Family? That word used to be the reason I gave everything. Now it was just an empty shell. "Daniel," I said, my voice even, not hard, not soft. "Do you remember what you said to me when I was in the hospital?" He didn't answer. "You said I had insurance, that the hospital would handle it. You said you were busy." "Mom, I don't hate you," I interrupted gently, "but I'm no longer responsible for supporting grown adults." The words fell between us like a door closing. Not slammed, not loud, just closed. Rachel texted me that night, longer than before, more emotional, filled with a more we and us. "Read it." Then I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I had nothing left to explain. I began packing up my home. The small house in Ohio had held me through a long chapter, one of silence, of endurance. I didn't resent it, but I no longer wanted to live in a place where every wall knew how quiet I had been. I sold the house, moved to another state, closer to old friends, people who knew me before I became the mother who always gave. In my new place, I live in a small, bright apartment filled with sunlight. I drink morning coffee with neighbors. I take evening walks. No one here knows how much I once carried, and that feels better than I expected. One morning, I went to the bank and opened a small scholarship fund. I named it after my husband. No fanfare, no large plaque, just a way for my money, finally, to go where I chose. A few months later, I received another call from Daniel. This time, his voice was different, more tired, smaller. "Mom, I'm sorry." I stayed silent. I let the apology stand on its own. "I'm sorry for taking everything for granted," he continued. "I don't know how to start over." I took a deep breath. "Start by standing on your own," I said. "I can't do it for you anymore." He didn't beg. And for the first time, I thought the apology might be real. That evening, I sat alone on my balcony, watching the lights of my new city come on. I didn't feel the loud satisfaction of victory. I felt light. Light because I had spoken. Light because I no longer had to prove my worth. I understood something late, but clearly, I didn't take revenge. I simply stopped being silent. And it turns out that was enough. One thing I learned after everything that happened is this: God is never blind to human suffering. Maybe today you are being looked down on. Maybe your sacrifices have been taken for granted. Maybe you stayed silent for too long, believing that silence was the way to keep the family together, to preserve peace. But Scripture tells us that the truth will set us free, and God's justice does not arrive with noise. It arrives at the right time. I did not stand up to take revenge. I simply stood upright to speak the truth. And when the truth is brought into the light, no one can deny it anymore. If you are watching this story and feel that it touches your own life, remember this: God sees you. He knows what you have endured in silence, and your worth is not measured by how much you give, but by the dignity God placed within you from the very beginning. I pray that God grants you the wisdom to know when to remain silent and the courage to know when it is time to stand up. I pray that He protects your heart from bitterness and leads your steps in truth and peace. If this story has given you strength, please share it with those who need to be reminded that they are not alone. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. And if you wish to continue walking with stories of justice, truth, and dignity, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the stories to come. May God bless and be with everyone watching this video.